Happy New Year from Boss Lady Coaching. I'm Hollie Sexton along with Megan Stith, and our guest today is Jerry Mraz. Jerry came back, so welcome. And there's so much to talk about, but it's interesting how 2021 is already laying out to be the year of professional development, and so many people are looking for new careers and new challenges, and we're here for it, all of it. So I'm glad to have you back, Jerry, and Megan. It's so good to see you. The last time we saw each other was a very sad occasion, so it's good to be here to talk about what's good and what's new. And that sad occasion was the death of our friend Tanya Seabrooks. And Tanya Seabrooks has been a friend to us and a friend to Boss Lady Coaching from the beginning, and participated in so many of our events and just been there for all of it. So Megan, thank you for spearheading the scholarship for Tanya. And how can people learn more about that and how to donate?
Well, thank you, Hollie. And it really was such a loss, and something that I know I continue to feel on a daily basis when I get those Facebook notifications about a memory with Tanya. So, I am very grateful. She always not only had a smile on her face, but was trying to get us to take pictures and all over social media. So really her legacy, being able to think about those fun times together when I get those reminders on Facebook, it's meant a lot. And it's just also meant a lot to see the community step up and support this scholarship fund in her honor, which is the Tanya Seabrooks, the Game Changer Scholarship at ECTC. We've got over $2,000 donated so far, and anything that is given, this is funded by the community, funded by people who knew and loved her and want to continue to support ECTC students. And the fund will have a preference for women who are from Radcliffe with an interest in social justice or entrepreneurship. And we can continue to build this fund, which will make awards for the next academic year, which will be fall 2021. So we still do have time to give. And if you're interested in supporting that effort, you can go to elizabethtown.kctcs.edu/giving. There's a little bit more information about how to give to ECTC, but more importantly, there's a button that says donate now, and that'll take you right to the online giving section of our website. And there's a drop-down menu that says Tanya's name, so you can pick her scholarship fund and give directly to that account, so that donations will go to her honor and to students who we feel like Tanya would have wanted to give a hand up and be part of their story. And really a bittersweet thing to be doing. Wish we weren't having to, but as soon as we got that news, that was the thing that I just felt like was on my heart personally, of like, we have to do something. And what would she have wanted? And lots of great things being done in her honor, but that's one that hopefully we can continue for many years to come, and will always be a game changer in our community because of her. So hopefully I'm not crying yet.
Absolutely. And when you said that, I just thought Tanya would love that. But yeah, I hate that we're having the conversation, but she would absolutely love that. So I encourage everybody to vote, or to go to and to donate. Every donation counts there, and I'm so happy to see that awarded in our community. And it's definitely something Tanya would have wanted for her legacy. Good news, congratulations to female-owned business celebrating their 6th year, Business House. So yay, Business House.
Yay.
Town. Yeah, they've been in downtown E-Town for 6 years. So shout out to Lauren Jones-Strompt and her crew there. We appreciate everything that they're doing at Business House to help promote and advertise other businesses. So a lot of strategy and game changing there. So congratulations to Lauren and her team. And Megan, before we get into Jerry's show, because this is Jerry's show, he is going to bring the skills, and he did all the prep to get us ready to talk about job applications and resumes. So many people are looking for new jobs, and the process can be overwhelming. So we're going to do some professional development today, and Jerry's going to share all sorts of very valuable information. But before that, are you still in school? Are you still on your way to be
Yes, haven't given up yet. I'm 5 classes in, and I'll share my little, this is just one of my little tricks I've got a spot here for each class that I have to take. And, I've just found that big projects like this or things that are years to do, I have to find ways to stay motivated. So little things like that, that when I'm done with the class, I fill in one of my squares and, just got to keep swimming and finding ways to stay on board with this. But really it's, I think sometimes we think about big life changes like changing jobs or like going back to school. We think about that as something that's going to be a burden or it's going to be pulling us away from other things we want to do. But my program just personally, it's energized me. It's forced me to reflect on things I'm doing in the workplace and ways I can be a better leader. So in a lot of ways, not only am I learning things, which is a benefit, but it's actually just helped me in so many ways already in just this short time. So I'm very grateful to be going back to school in a pandemic. It really is a good idea. It has a lot of benefits. I'm spending my time on things other than watching the news and stressing out and scrolling through social media.
Doom scrolling, yeah.
Doom scrolling, no doom scrolling, no time for that. So yeah, haven't given up yet, enjoying the classes I'm in this term. And thank you for the opportunity to share. It's really been an adventure and I appreciate everyone that supported me along the way.
Well, we're rooting for you to be Dr. Megan. We're excited about that. And I love the visual there where you're marking it off every class and it says, just keep swimming. Because some days,
yes.
Like, just keep
I need
it. That's fantastic. Well, we're into Jerry time now, and Jerry Mraz, as I mentioned, is back with us. And Jerry has been continues to be a valuable mentor for Boss Lady Coaching and for me. And so we're going to provide some helpful information over the next little bit about job applications and resumes. So Jerry, we'll start with your outline and just move along. So before we begin, what was your takeaway in preparing all of this incredible information for us?
I think the big takeaway, and Megan, you just mentioned it, sometimes you look at something and it seems very daunting and big. You have to just step back one piece at a time, break it down, and go after those things. And I think when it comes to job search and preparing a resume, it's the same thing. It's probably the most difficult thing you will ever write is your own resume. But don't let that overwhelm you. Just start and go a little piece at a time, and maybe I can provide some tips on how to do that today.
All right, that's good stuff. So let's begin with the search. What do we need to know? So many people are searching for jobs. So how can we get equipped to search the right way? Is there a right way?
I don't know if there's a right way necessarily, but there's a way that you can organize that a little bit. One of the things that I think is very important is to decide early on, what do you want to do? Are you looking for something in a government sector, private sector? Are you willing to relocate for a job? Do you just want to look in the area that you're in? You may be confined. Some of the answers to those questions are confined by your current situation. But take some time to assess that and be realistic about where you're going to apply and where you're going to look. Be realistic in assessing your experience. And that's where, and we talked about this before, having a mentor becomes very important. If you had a mentor, that's someone who's probably helping you through that process of establishing where you are and finding where you are, and that's going to help direct you to certain places to look. Right now, looking for jobs, it just keeps getting easier all the time. There's so many online opportunities and places you can go. LinkedIn is a terrific place to find jobs, to network with people. Google Jobs is out there. You can search specific organizations. If you're looking for a job in education, you want to work at a community college, hit ECTC's website, hit some of the other colleges' websites. They almost always have an employment section, as do many companies. But don't forget some of the basics. It's great to have all the technology, but many people find jobs, get jobs, or successful candidates by networking with people, face-to-face network with folks. That becomes important. One thing I'd add just a couple of other things about the job search itself. I think it's possible to stay in a job too long. Sometimes you want to look around and move a little bit. You want to show some progression in responsibility. Progression isn't always measured in dollars necessarily. It could be responsibility or in different areas that you're working in. Hence, lateral movements can be perfectly okay and will show up on a resume. You kind of know sometimes when it's time to change. During this pandemic, a lot of people were given the signal it's time to change. You didn't have a vote in that, but the change is there. Don't see that as a bad thing. Look at what's going on as an opportunity, career change, job change, whatever the case may be. It's not a bad thing. One thing I would throw in, and even when it comes time for searching, you're going to put a job on a resume. Be thoughtful about that. Is this a job I want to put on a resume? Do I want to make sure that that's there? And then one last thought on this whole thing is, as you build that resume, as people submit resumes, I've reviewed hundreds and hundreds of resumes. It's pretty easy when you find that person that we used to call them job hoppers. They'd spend 6 months in a job and 8 months in a job and 3 months in a job, and they're just bouncing around. Now, there may be perfectly good reasons for that, but if it becomes what seems to be a trend, it worried the hiring officials that maybe there's a little bit of a stability problem here, and be cautious about leaving a place too soon.
Jerry, those are all great points. And Megan, I would say that this is where two things can happen. As Jerry mentioned, mentoring, but also coaching. So how do you know if you're staying too long or if you're job hopping too much? Can you address that, Megan?
Sure. And I think that's where being able to work with, whether it's a coach or a mentor, somebody that can give an objective outside opinion. Sometimes that's a hard thing to be able to identify about yourself. And I think that's where having that person you can have these type of career conversations with is so valuable. And I think it's something that we don't often do enough in our workplaces. A lot of the time we do that annual review and, how's it going? What do we need to work on for the next year? But it's not often thinking about what are you enjoying about your job? What do you want in a job in terms of things that are going to fulfill you and be rewarding? And, if you're not having those conversations in your workplace, working with a coach or working with a mentor to identify, really what are those triggers, what are those things that when they happen, it might be an indicator that you've grown to your capacity and you might be ready for another challenge or a stretch. I think it's really part of a more comprehensive plan that we all should have and be thoughtful about with our careers. And often working through that with somebody else is the way to uncover what that plan is going to look like for each of us individually.
Great answer. Thanks, Megan. So Jerry, back to you. We've talked about the search. Now let's talk about the actual application process. When should we apply and how should we apply?
Well, I think I shared with you as we prepared for this. This is the one place where I get to throw down the old guy card a little bit. You are so fortunate nowadays. We are fortunate nowadays. Gone are the days of printing resumes, worrying about what stock the paper was and what font to use. Going in to the post office with a big giant box of things you've got to mail out. Most all applications are online now. It's quick, cheap, easy to do that. Don't be afraid to apply often, but quite frankly, don't flood places with your resume when you're really not qualified. Trust me, the HR folks are get used to seeing the same names pop up again and again, and it's frustrating to sort through all of those unqualified applicants to get to the qualified applicants. So you need to do a little bit of that sorting and searching for them, and make sure you apply for things that are in your skill set that you would want to do. As you apply, it's important to do some homework. As I'd mentioned, most companies have a link for job applications on their website, or if you find an application, it has a link to the company's website. That's a hint. Check them out. Do some research, because when it comes to interview time, if you get to that stage, you don't want to go in cold. And the best place to learn about a company is learn about what they say about themselves. Take a look at that company and see if it's the kind of place that you would feel comfortable working in. As Megan mentioned, there's a lot of satisfaction that comes from work that isn't just a paycheck. Make sure it's a company that has room for you to grow, that you can kind of stretch, you can learn some new things, and again, just kind of get that feel for that company. do that detective work on that organization. I've helped a couple of people recently in the private sector. Is gotten to be fairly easy. Find out what's the company's reputation. What do customers have to say about them? What's their financial standing? How long have they been in business? Those are good things to know, and you may find yourself jumping at a job to say, wow, that looks really good. You start to do some work only to find out that company may be a little narrow. They may not be as stable as I think they could be. So it's time well spent.
Agreed. Great advice there. So doing detective work, and you're right, it's gotten a lot easier, specifically if you search like on Monster or even free LinkedIn accounts.
Yeah.
You can pull up reviews, you can pull up the job descriptions and look at keywords there and determine if that's a place that you really want to be. Okay, so the great debate of all time when it comes to applications and it comes to resumes. To cover letter or not to cover letter? Megan, go. Do you or don't you?
I am in camp cover letter. I don't know if that's, I'm interested to hear what Jerry says, but I'm a huge fan of both receiving them. Actually, as an employer, I have requested cover letters in job postings to just specifically see if people follow directions and actually do that. So I've used it as an employer as a screening tool. And then as an applicant, I just personally, maybe it's that salesman side of me. I like to explain how I would be a good fit, explain just the background, and I like that opportunity to make that pitch. So I'm firmly in camp cover letter, but I can't wait to hear if that's a smart place to be or not.
All right, Jerry, you're up. Megan, there's a lot of great points in there. And one thing Jerry and I talked about is if you have one, if the answer is yes, you can't make it super long. All right, Jerry, go for it.
Okay, I'm in camp. I'm going to give you a wishy-washy answer. How about that? You made an absolutely excellent point, and that was, did they ask for one? Did the employer ask for one? It's a test. It's one of those little tests. Did the person follow directions? I come from the environment of the federal government, and I will tell you, typically speaking, we didn't want a cover letter. There were times when we did ask for those, and that was kind of a check mark. Did they bother to apply? In fact, it could be a disqualifier. If that's one of the required elements of a job application and you don't provide it, guess what? You don't get forwarded. Your application is probably done right at that point in time. I would say when in doubt, or if the organization is silent on asking for a cover letter or saying anything about it, send one. Keep it short. I'd suggest 1 page if at all possible, not make it 2 pages. Be careful about the information. If yes is your answer, be careful that that what is said in your cover letter should also jive with what's in your resume. Now, I'm not suggesting you repeat things that are in your resume, but don't bring up new information in the cover letter that isn't in your resume. If you talk about a job experience in the cover letter, maybe some more details are in the resume. Those things have to balance out and synchronize with one another. Don't use a boilerplate letter. Boy, you can find out, you can sense that in a heartbeat. You have to remember that people that are reviewing your application and your resume probably have experience like I do, where you are reviewing hundreds of these things, and the trends pop out very quickly. You can tell when somebody sent you a cover letter that's the same cover letter they send to everybody else. As nice as all the technology is, as I said, it's very easy and quick to apply. It's very easy to change and personalize things. So take the time to do it and make sure that your cover letter may address and really kind of guide that employer to say, this is why I'm the fit for your job. This is why I would do well in your organization. Here's a place, and we'll talk about this in a little bit. A cover letter is a great place to talk about the soft skills that you have. A resume is really in some ways built on hard skills. It's an evidence of your record. It's a document that tells where you've gone to school and what kind of training you've had. The soft skills sometimes are the important things. Yes, I may need to know, you may have to have certain training or qualification or certification or some body of experience, but I want to know if you're going to fit on my team. How are you going to mesh into my organization? And a cover letter can be a valuable tool for doing that, because it doesn't fit, that kind of thing doesn't fit particularly well in the body of a resume. So there was I hard enough to pin down? Did my politician resume come through?
I think both are valid, and you're right. And it really is contextual. I learned some things from what Megan said, and I wrote down what you said about soft skills, because I was always at a loss what to put in the cover letter. And you want to be confident, but not cocky. You really want to watch your tone. And I think this is one of those situations where you want to bring a mentor or a trusted friend in, have more than one person look at your cover letter. And the other thing I would say there, Jerry, that you brought up that I hadn't thought about before in our initial meeting is about how it is promoting your soft skills and what you're gifted at, but also taking an opportunity also to be introspective and find out, imagine yourself in that specific position. The difference between searching for a job and going into a career is looking at this this opportunity that you're applying for and imagining yourself in there and imagining what you would bring to that. So writing a little narrative first, writing a couple drafts until you're happy with it, and then treating it seriously and getting it to some respected colleagues and friends who will take a look at it for you before you send it.
Yeah, I think that's critical. And I mentioned earlier, I really believe this, that the hardest thing you do is write your own resume. And one mistake you can make is trying to do that by yourself. You want to have somebody who can look at that resume. I review a lot of resumes. I've reviewed 2 since the first of the year already. And I tell people, I'll look at your resume, but be prepared. I will be brutally honest, and you should want me to be brutally honest with your resume. The challenge you're going to have is I'll be brutally honest and tear something up. You'll hand it to Megan and she'll go, wow, that was really awesome. You really need to have more of that. And you know what? Neither one of us are right or wrong. You've got to decide at some point after you've taken that feedback and which way do you lean? There's a personal choice there, but get that outside view.
Well, it's good to know thyself. So when you get that the angel and the devil, so to speak, you get their friend that's like, this is awesome, and then your other friend just rips it apart. Yeah, somewhere in the middle is usually where to go. So before we dig deep into resumes and talk about specifics to get stronger with our resumes, feel free to share an anecdote. You don't have to get personal, but anything stand out, Megan, as far as cliches or cover letters, anything that you've received that has just jumped out at you was an absolute no?
You know, I've seen a lot of resumes and gone through a lot of search processes. I think the main thing that really turns me off as an employer is when clearly, like, this person's just applying to anything under the sun. So when you can tell there's not been thought in customizing, that cover letter, or, especially me being from the nonprofit field, this might be a little bit, it's just a personal preference from my perspective, but I would get no shortage of applications that would talk about how rewarding it is to work in the nonprofit field. And they typically, this is coming from people who want to break into nonprofits, and their cover letter and their sales pitch, in the interviews was really about how fulfilling and meaningful, and they just really are passionate about the organization. And while the work is meaningful, it's also really hard. So sometimes that type of feedback and language would raise some red flags to me, because it, to me, made me question whether they were prepared for the realities of, like, I've had homeless people with my cell phone number, and we've had to talk through some really difficult issues. And I've had, just the drama that happens when you're in a small organization and you're on a shoestring budget, and those challenges. Passion's important, but if that's the only thing pushing you forward, it's gonna get not real fun sometimes pretty quickly. So I guess I would look for people who help the employer understand how they are solving a problem for our organization, and putting what they can do in terms of how it's going to add value. Those are the people I really like to pay attention to, get really interested in. I want to hear from when I feel like they understand our challenges and they're telling me how what they are uniquely positioned to do is going to help address our needs and add value to the team.
That is a great point, Megan. I think because sometimes, especially with core values, people feel like they need to express passion. And sometimes to do that, we get real thinky feely, and it's good to get thinky feely sometimes. But what you're talking about is really critical thinking, problem solving, understanding that, yes, we do good work, we do meaningful work every day, but it's messy. And knowing that a person has the aptitude to be able to go in, and the mental toughness to be able to go in and say, you're not going to have that feel good feeling all the time. That's not what it's about. We're solving real world problems. So
yeah, just realistic expectations. Like, are we on the same page with really what this is going to look like, and trying to get for that in the application process?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, not a Snow White bluebirds on your shoulder getting dressed with nature's animals in the morning, you know?
That's not what my world looks like. So I wish it was, but
That's an excellent point. Jerry, do you have anything you want to share that stands out? That's a cliche, something that is an absolute no for you, or something that you just shred when you're coaching or mentoring for resumes?
Couple of things real quick on the cover letter thing before we jump into the resume piece, and then it can bleed over. It's very frustrating and is an immediate turnoff. I've seen it not on myself, but people that sit on hiring panels. When you read a cover letter or an element of a resume and realize, wait a minute, I've heard this before. And I'm reading the job description, the position description that I wrote. It's coming right out of the advertisement. I think sometimes people do that to say, I want to speak your language. Don't repeat my words back to me. Tell me how you fit. As Megan was saying, you know, show me some that you understand probably what we do. One other thing that's a huge turnoff. We used to see this quite often in military, Defense Department kind of jobs. Name dropping. People want to name drop in a cover letter. You know, General Schmedlap thinks I'm just the most wonderful thing in the way. And it's like, stop. I don't, you know, one, I don't work for that guy. And
Guilty, 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 100%.
Cover letter is about you, not who you know. It's about you, and it needs to be about you, your passion, your knowledge, your skills, and how you're going to fit. not who's patted you on the head in the past.
Not how many coins I have.
Like those in the background right there. Yeah.
That's great advice, and absolutely, hey, good to know. Stop with the name dropping.
That's right.
I hear often there's and it's just been fired up through the pandemic because people have more time, often on Instagram for these work memes. And one of the things that I see coming up over and over and over again in the meme is, it's who you know, it's who you know, it's who you know. But you're saying it's not who you know.
It can be who you know to help network, but be careful about taking credit for that senior person's good work, and don't try to ride that coattail too heavily. That you've been acknowledged and worked on a higher level organization, maybe that's a good thing, but just be cautious about how much you rely upon that as opposed to your own personal tenacity and skills.
Oh, for sure, because it can reek of insincerity, and you don't want that. Nobody wants that.
Right.
It's bad for everybody. It's bad for the organization, for the person applying, all of it. So great advice. All right, so moving on to resumes.
Yeah, we finally get to resumes.
Yeah, finally. So we've talked beginning the process, applications, cover letters, and now let's get the down and dirty with resumes, Jerry.
Let me throw some things that people can maybe put in their toolkit for resumes that they will find helpful. I just mentioned, I reviewed a resume just last week of an individual who's applying for a job here in the States, an online job. They will do it from their country that they're from. And it was really interesting for me to review a resume written by somebody who doesn't live in America. Their English was amazing. But you could see cultural differences in how they approach things. And so I tried to guide them to say, maybe it works where you live. It's probably not going to work up here too well. And let me give you some suggestions. And I'll point a couple of those out as we go. Sweat the small stuff. It matters with your resume. This is where you've got that person helping you read the resume to make sure, and they got to be nitpicky about stuff. No grammar errors, no spelling errors, no punctuation errors. Because I'll tell you what, and you're looking at one of them, if I would find a spelling error in a resume, man, the proofreader hat went on right after that. And I'm picking that thing apart for pieces and probably missing the content. So that's an incredibly distracting thing. And it's a big giant red flag that says, I don't pay attention to detail. Your job's not important enough for me to spell check my resume. Maybe you're not important enough for me to hire. Be consistent when you build your resume. Bullet points. I'm a big fan of bullet points in resumes. Are you going to use periods and punctuation at the end of that? Well, yes, no, it's possible they're bullets. They can be full sentences. They can be incomplete sentences. Be consistent. If you're going to start with full sentences, use them throughout. If you're going to put a period at the end of each bullet, do that for every one. If you're not on some, don't do it for any. Again, it's kind of that proofreader thing that you'll pull that employer into if you're not careful. Opening with a vision statement has become a very common thing. There are certain governmental resume formats that don't allow for that, so don't try to force one in there. But they're good. I pulled out a couple of resume samples. I keep resumes that I like. Here's one, a summary, proven record. This is their kind of their lead-in summary statement. Proven record of delivering superior business results through strategic business partnership with significant experience in human resources, strategy, project and operations management, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's about 3-4 pages or 3 or 4 sentences long. Not long, but it just kind of some big picture oversight. It's not a second cover letter for you cover letter fans, but it's just kind of a quick, this is my perspective on how things work in the world. Be
Jerry,
careful.
Does that need to be relevant to the description of the job, the vision statement?
Not necessarily. This can be a little more generic. And I wouldn't, it's not going to be a bad thing if you personalize it, but you got to be careful that people read your vision statement. And your vision statement is, I've spent my entire life from the time I was a child desiring to work as a shift supervisor for UPS. Probably not. That I've wanted to work in major logistics corporations that impact the world. That's okay. And usually when you apply to UPS and FedEx and the post office and whoever else, it doesn't. So that my view is it doesn't have to be too specific, and too much specificity could be a little bit dangerous potentially. Back to the structure of the resume, be careful with gimmicky things. The use of all caps in certain things, or the use of interesting looking, strange fonts to emphasize some particular point. Colors of print, colors of type, colors of fonts can be distracting. And they just all of a sudden, it's like, just, make it black and white. Just let the resume speak for itself. You don't need to turn it into a cartoon page or anything. When I wrote this for the outline that we're working from here, I put no photos ever. And I thought, I'm not even sure why I'm saying that until last week. And I reviewed a resume, and what did I find? A photo. If that was that resume from the individual who's from outside the country, there it must be, found out that it's something that's common practice. Here, that's against most policies in most companies, and certainly within the government. Do not send me a photo. Don't want to see one. Just, don't do that.
Hang on, Jerry. Megan, what do you think about that? Because we're digital natives now. So since we're so driven by imagery, what do you think about that in your sector, and then perhaps in the nonprofit sector?
I guess I am more traditional too, in that I prefer not to see them, just because, what I would like to see is like a LinkedIn profile or connection there. And I can obviously do a little bit more vetting about somebody, kind of digitally that way. But I just feel like also it's, to me, not a good use of space on a resume. Like I'd rather, use that to tell me more that's going to be relevant to the search process, rather than just because so many people have advised against it. I wonder, I'm like, who's still telling people to do this? So I guess I agree with Jerry there. I'd rather not use that space for, give me a quote about, a supervisor's quote about your experience. Like you can get maybe not, non-traditional in a different way than adding a photo. And if I want to know what you look like, I'll do that vetting process, making sure we have a good social media footprint if we need to, but otherwise I don't feel like it's relevant.
Got it. From an HR perspective, I definitely understand what Jerry was saying about how for some sectors it's illegal and unethical. But I would caution, because I believe it's in Microsoft templates. There is a Microsoft template resume that includes the photo. So when looking at templates or free templates, or you Google free templates, be cautious about the free or about the photo portion. All right, sweet. Links. How long should a resume be? How many pages, Jerry?
Well, the preponderance of my experience is from the government sector, and they are nauseatingly long sometimes. I always used to hate that. Allow people, I can say that now because I'm not in the government anymore. We would allow people some maximum amount of characters that was just disgusting. And some people felt compelled, they were going to take, if it was 10,000 characters, they were going to give you 9,999. The more successful resumes that I saw used about half the characters and half the space that was allotted. Even on government resumes, and mine was pretty disgusting along those lines, it was maybe 3 pages. And that was lengthy, and it was not one I would use in the private sector. I'd say 2 pages if you can, I think is generally been a standard for a long time. And we used to get private sector resumes, 2 to 3 pages is about what it went. I'd be interested to see, Megan, what's your perspective on length?
Yeah, I would say, and I also come from now the higher ed world, which is, the curriculum vitae, it's pages and pages and pages. So, I agree that shorter, I'd rather see something more concise and focused. Maybe it's just, I've been around my boss, Dr. Pate, enough now, who in my head, he's always telling me, whatever you think, cut it in half. That's his motto. And, typically like mine personally is, I think about 1.5 pages. So like, I just wouldn't personally feel confident in doing anything over 2 pages. Because I think at some point you're giving more detail that's going to detract from probably the most important thing. So I don't think longer is necessarily better.
Yeah, I think that, as you'd mentioned, sometimes it's appropriate to have an attachment to a resume. You may want to provide, a job may want a writing sample. And I've been in interviews where a writing sample was called for in the application process. Or sometimes candidates will just provide a writing sample. I submitted this article, it was published, here it is. That's not a bad thing. Don't make it a main part of your resume. Make that an attachment to what you're doing. And as you said, with academic resumes, oh my gosh, those can go on forever and a day. But I'll see your academic resume and raise you. Try hiring a lawyer. Legal resumes and legal job applications are mind-numbing. You have a basic resume, you have a detailed cover letter, you have transcript validations from schools, you have people that will submit case summaries on cases that they've done and position papers. Sometimes 80, 90 pages per applicant for those kind of things. And that's expected.
They want a spelling bee in 2nd grade.
Too much.
Oh, I'm learning so much because, Megan, I don't know if you've done this for your boys, but I started at a Google Doc for Tristan. It's sick. I've got a sickness with it.
You're way ahead of the game.
Well, I started it because when we were working with Carson on applying to colleges and universities, and when we were looking at applying for just for scholarship opportunities and that type of thing, I saw how little we had documented for him and how much he had done. But I love what Dr. Pate said, whatever you think, cut it in half. So we don't need that Tristan attended ECTC's summer coding camp in 5th grade.
Well, I think that's where, something like LinkedIn, just personally how I use LinkedIn is that for me, that's where I dump everything because it is easy to forget. And I think you bring up a great point that, sometimes, especially when you have had more professional experience and you've done a bunch of leadership programs, or you've had different projects that you want to put some good solid results behind and include that on your resume, for me, I put a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, and then as I'm customizing my resume, which even though I'm not actively searching for positions, I keep my resume current. Every, at least a couple of times a year, I'm updating it so I don't forget things. So I think you bring up a good point that document it somehow, whether it's just a list of, I guess it is never too early to start, but just start that Word document of all of those accomplishments, because you will forget. You'll forget dates. You'll forget when you did things. You'll forget when that promotion happened. So keep a record, and then you don't have to put all of that detail into your resume, but at least you have it on record somewhere, and you can pull it when you need it.
Fantastic. So writing samples, say contextually, would be if you're hiring, you want to work for HuffPost, or you want to work for the News Enterprise. That would be when you would submit a writing sample, or as Jerry mentioned, if it's asked, or other add-ons. And LinkedIn is a great place to store all of those things, as Megan said. Let's talk references, Jerry. How many references do we need, and do they go on the initial resume on the 2 to 3 pages? What do we do with references?
With references, normally 3 seems to be kind of the standard. I wouldn't go more than 5, depending on the kind of job. I usually, as I've talked to folks about this, I usually say you ought to have one reference that talks about your current job, what you currently do. So sort of a professional reference. One job, and that's probably not going to be your current boss. It's probably better sometimes a former boss or a colleague. You need to have a reference that can talk about you as a person, a personal reference, a character reference in some respects. And then maybe if you've not been, if you're fairly recent out of school, a professor is a good person, somebody who can attest to your academic skills, your studies, that kind of thing. That's kind of what I have. And I generally have never thought of the reference page as a part of the 3 pages of the resume. That's almost an attachment to a resume.
Okay, good point. I also have in your notes to always ask permission, and do so in a respectful way. Ask a reference for permission. Keep them informed of how things are going, how your job search is going, and follow up with progress reports, and to make sure and say thank you. One thing I do want to add to this is when I've talked with people or mentored them, they're concerned that their employer may find out that they're actively searching for work. So how would you advise someone to go about gathering references, but doing so in a way that they feel safe to do so, and that their current job is secure?
That's where you're definitely going to have to go to that trusted person. And if you've established a mentor relationship with somebody, that mentor is probably going to be one of those people that you'll want to turn to, not only for a reference, but maybe they can help guide you to some other people that they find that would be good references, which is why I think when we did the mentoring segment for this, I said your mentor should never be your current boss. They can mentor you in a way, but not in, and this is one of those cases where the non-boss mentor can be very, very helpful.
Agreed. And there was a point there, I'll come back to it, but you and I talked about over the weekend as we were prepping for this. And I remember what it was. We did not intend, I'd like to say this, we're geniuses, and we intended for it to lay out like this, but we did not. When we recorded for the first time, when Megan and I recorded with Jerry, we did not plan to expand the series, but we started with mentorship. And so I highly recommend going back and listening to that and watching it. It's on our iTunes page, Boss Lady Coaching on iTunes. It's also, it's on, Megan, I'm having a
SoundCloud, I think.
SoundCloud. SoundCloud. Yes, we're still on SoundCloud. Thank you. We're also, we had a break. So now I'm just,
I don't remember anything about 2020, which is a good thing.
But you can hear that interview with Jerry where we talk about quality mentors and how to get one, or to be one, or to do both, on SoundCloud and iTunes, and it's on YouTube as well, and on Instagram and Facebook. So go back and watch that. That's free. So this is kind of laying out in a beautiful way where we talk about mentorships, we're talking about job applications and resumes, and then in February, we're going to round things out with a job interview. So again, we didn't plan it like that, but it's just kind of worked out that way, which is exciting. So back to jobs in on your resume. How many jobs and how far back do we go for a quality resume?
We were talking about that a few minutes ago, and I jotted this down. For jobs, 5 years. For education, if it produced a degree, it never ages out. For training and certifications, things that are current or recent. The fact that I may be skilled in writing computer programs in DOS probably doesn't matter nowadays anymore. That I know how to use a mimeograph machine. Most of you don't even know what a mimeograph machine is. That stuff, it doesn't matter. Things roll along pretty quickly. That gets tough. It's hard to prune your resume down. I have a fairly large body of work since I've worked for a long time. And so it at some point along the way, it got hard for me to say, gosh, I really hate not mentioning that job anymore. But hey, it doesn't matter what I did 15 years ago, potentially. Or if you really feel compelled to do that, just do a one-liner. Was the commander of this battalion, boom, from date to date, and that's that. Which, if I may jump back real quick on one thing that we talked about over the weekend, I had mentioned to you how people talk about specific jobs, and maybe this is a good time to plug this in, how you mention a job in a resume. I have a sample of mine. I won't even read it and embarrass myself. It's just a job description. It says responsible for, should do, will fund, review, Doesn't say a thing about what I did. It says what I was supposed to do. And I guess my assumption was everybody knew that I did such a great job that I did all that stuff. But I did pull this resume out and found this one. And it is an example of tell somebody what the job is, but this resume is written out in bullet style. So it's a position, to, from, dates, and then 4 bullets below each one. The first bullet in each one of the things is something like this one. The title, Assistant Operations Officer. First bullet, prepares detailed plans and directs all unit level taskings and mission for an 800-person battalion. That's just a description. The next 3, and I'll read the first couple. Second bullet, planned and executed battalion mission 1802, $27 million division level exercise. Bullet point 3, successfully planned, resourced, and executed platoon level firing exercise for the entire battalion, certifying over 600 soldiers and directing and maintaining unit readiness. Those subsequent bullets in that job description now start to say, these are things I accomplished. This is what I did. And I think that to me is just kind of a good way to lay out a resume. Don't just regurgitate that job description for that job and say nothing else. Here's a quick thing on the job, basically what it's about, but here's what I accomplished in the course of the time I was doing that job.
Megan, how many bullet points on that do you want to see with what Jerry described? Because I'm thinking right now of my LinkedIn, and during a 15-year career span at a job, it was just like, it's insane. How many of those do you want to see? How many are relevant?
I think and I hate to be, I'm going to be wishy-washy on this one. I think it depends. I think it depends on your, how much length you have to begin with. And I think what's most relevant to the job. So, I think that is my favorite thing to see on our resumes. I'm so glad you brought this up, Jerry, because it's about accomplishments. It's not about what your job description was. And it helps, it's thinking about the perspective of the company you're applying for, because, not everyone understands, what your title meant, or what, for example, if you just say, I managed budgets, well, that's great. But was this $1 million budget, a $5 million budget, a $20,000 budget? Just even if you don't have, a huge track record of accomplishments you feel like you can take ownership for, just helping someone understand the scope of what that position entailed, supervised. Well, that's great. How many people, how many direct reports, just some level of detail. So I think, really to answer your question, whatever amount it takes to bring that position to life for the reviewers, and also to really show what you could do in this position based on the constraints of length and kind of how the rest of your resume is fitting together. So I don't think there's a magic number, but I think just to me, if you are showing your accomplishments, I view those resumes differently than people that just give me their job descriptions.
Oh, not wishy-washy, super duper helpful. Okay, so, I mentioned earlier about this funny work meme site that I follow and that I see all the time with hashtags on Instagram. One thing they talk about is how they don't have time, and this is geared toward millennials. I don't have time to work on my resume because I'm too busy filling out an application. So are they two different things? What is the difference between a resume and an application?
I'll jump on that one and tell you that, again, the great, I must have been those lawyer things I did. You know, it depends. It can be both. I helped someone with a resume very recently. We were working on the resume, went to the application site, and the online application was a resume, basically. And all the elements of the resume we just polished up fit perfectly in there. And there was a little bit of moaning of, I can't believe I spent all that time on a resume and it looks like they're going to use their application. I'm like, you filled out the application. It's perfect. And that's not uncommon now, that applications kind of lead people through, because the employer wants to know specific things. They're just going to ask you specific things. If I want to know specifics, but I just take your resume, I don't know if I'm going to get what I want. So again, it doesn't hurt to have that, but cut and paste. Don't give information in the application that's not in your resume. Make sure you can crosswalk those things, and cutting and pasting that information into the application is not a bad way to do that.
Okay, so instead of hating life, like Megan mentioned earlier with going back to school, instead of hating that you need to fill out an application in addition to having a resume, see it as an opportunity to learn more about your work experience and about yourself, and self-assessment. It's a free self-assessment. See it like that. Just flip the script. All right, so we are ready to move on to social media after one more point about sharing volunteer work, associations, and memberships. What's a way to do that without humble bragging, or is humble bragging okay?
I think, again, approach it like you do. Too many people will, it's like they don't consider volunteer work. Sometimes it's more work than a paid job. A young man had me review a resume not long ago, and one of his positions, I happen to know this position because I know him fairly well. He put down here, and he listed it in his job. He's a college kid, so he has a college kid resume. It's not a lot of points on there. Youth small group leader has a little line about what the group thing did. Then he put shared valuable life experiences with youth aged 10 to 13 to promote positive self-esteem and improve social skills. Next bullet, improve students coping with routine life activities such as interfamily conflict and school activities. He took that volunteer position and turned it into what sounded like a paid job. Those are important things. And a good way to handle that is just treat it like what it was, basically a job for you. Now, I don't know that I'd even call it humble bragging. I mean, he's just taking credit for the things that he did.
Fantastic. That's a great example. Megan, before we move on to social media, do you have anything to add to that point about volunteer?
Yeah, I was going to say, if you can't brag in your resume, when can you? I feel like this is an okay time. Like, if you've gotten awards, if you're active in the community, like, the way I present this, I have my work experience separately, but then I have, I think it's an honors and affiliations section, where I just talk about, some awards. It's okay. If you've done the work and you've been recognized, then own it. And don't apologize. So yes, it's okay to say if you've done something really well and been recognized. And, I have those different leadership programs I've participated in, or board or committee positions. I don't rely on those as much now that I do have more paid work experience, but I think it's still been important for me to include when the job is relevant to community engagement, when that is, I think, something employers value in the field I'm in. So, I don't apologize on that one. If I'm oversharing the things I'm doing in the community, that we probably wouldn't get along anyway if that's a deal breaker for an employer.
That's great. We have a saying in broadcasting, and that is shameless self-promotion, always.
Because I won't do it all the time, but if I can't do it in a job search, what's the point? Like,
yeah, I mean, if you can't and don't have the opportunity to be the best salesperson for yourself, there's nobody that's going to do it for you unless you have
exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we did hit honors, awards, and other braggadocios in there. So we hit that point. Also, offices held maybe religious, significant projects in volunteer work associations and memberships. We talked about authenticity, keeping it real, cut the name dropping, make it more about what you've done, not about who you know. And finally, we'll talk about social media. Applying for jobs and wrapping up that resume, they will check social media. Jerry, would you like to expand on your point with social?
My point with that is I sat on numerous hiring panels for senior individuals, for senior executive positions in the government. I guarantee you we would do searches on social media to see what people look like. What are they posting? Where are they going? What kind of language do they use on social media? How did they approach the interview or their resume? References that Megan's made today, and I think is a perfect thing, that people will look at your LinkedIn that offer up that site. That's a good thing to do, which provides the caution that we should all live with. Be careful what you post. I mean, the bottom line is, posting yourself at a big party, doing all kinds of things that you might not be comfortable sharing with other people, probably not what you want to post. The old New York Times test, as we used to call it. If you're comfortable seeing your picture doing whatever activity on the cover of the New York Times, you're probably okay.
Yeah, I think of my grandma Lily. When she was alive, there was a lot of things I did in high school that she thought was questionable, and she made sure to let me know about it. And I always think of her, and I think, what would Grandma Lily think if I posted that? So Megan, and as a person who hires and who has applied for jobs and careers in the past few years, what do you think about the social component of resumes and applying for jobs?
Well, as an employer and in the type of field I'm in, it is actually important for me to see, that somebody is active on social media. A lot of the work that I do, it would be tough if somebody, wasn't on Facebook. And, as much as I have this love-hate relationship with social media, I think it's important. But I'm definitely, like Jerry said, I'm looking for the type of content, really more of the tone. Like, I don't care if they post pictures of their kids. I do the same thing. You'll hear about Star Wars and some hunting stuff and my kids. And that's about, I kind of keep it to that on social. But I think it's important, like LinkedIn for me, for example, I'm doing a lot more sharing of professional articles, sharing of things I'm doing at work. I'm actually more involved now on LinkedIn, I feel like, than anything else. So I think it matters. You probably need to know where your employer, the potential employer, where they're active, where they're going to be. If you're in a role that has any type of public visibility to it, where they're active, so you know where you need to be building that presence, and also what you need to be checking. It's okay to go back and delete some posts before you get into the job search. If you're going there, give your social media a screen just to make sure that there's nothing. You just would hate for that to be the reason that the position is offered for some silly mistake you made years ago.
So go back to your MySpace and delete all the photos from last week.
I'm so glad we went to college before social media. That's all I can say. Like, I'm just so grateful. All my bad decisions hopefully didn't make it to the internet, as far as I know.
For sure. And that's a lesson for all of our kids to remind them that it's forever now. Mm-hmm. And out there and easily searchable. Well, this is a great place to wrap up. I learned a lot. I took copious notes. So for the record, I'm not actively searching for a job right now. I'm very happy where I am, but I think it's always, as Megan mentioned earlier, a good idea to be up to date and to write things down as you go. Jerry, this was just so helpful. I appreciate all the work that you did here. And we are going to finish up our series Friday, February 5th. And that will go on the evening of the 5th, probably around 7 or 8 o'clock or so. And that will be in depth about job interviews. And Jerry's already done all the homework for us there, Megan, too. So I'm excited about it.
I can't wait. It's just such a fun topic. Like you said, even if you're not job hunting, just to be prepared and confident. And I think that's what hopefully these, even if you're not in that process right now, listening to these episodes will help everyone approach their next search with confidence. So I can't wait. I'm learning a lot too.
Me too. Jerry, anything to add before I say catch you later?
No, gosh, you let me rattle on a long time, and I appreciate that. And it's a topic I have great passion for. It's something I spent a lot of my career dealing with, and it's always fun to share. And I've got red pencils and pens sharp, ready to go. If you got a resume, send it my way, but buckle up. It'll be rough.
Oh my gosh, Jerry. Well, you just opened the floodgates. What's your contact information if people want to get
I'm going to rush to Facebook right now and make sure that's gone.
conveniently? Well, we're looking forward to February 5th. And in the meantime, I'm breaking fourth wall here. Back to you, viewer and listener. Please follow us on iTunes. We're at Boss Lady Coaching. We're also on that other place, SoundCloud. And we're at a Boss Lady Coaching podcast on SoundCloud. You can also find us at BeTheBossCoaching.com. Is that right, Megan?
Yep, you're good.
BeTheBossCoaching.com and Facebook and Instagram at Boss Lady Coaching. And I hope all of you have a happy and safe new year and that you're well, and share this with a friend. You never know who's going to learn something from the Boss Lady Coaching Network. We'll see you later. Bye.